Well, 24 banks in Kenya will actually shut down, or should I use the term collapse? If you've been watching news anyway, if you've been living under the stone or under the rock, these are the news. And this is the information from the KBA, that is Kenya Banks Association or Kenya Bankers Association. This is a body that actually, sort of like talks on behalf of the banks and such kind of a thing. So they have said that the 24 banks actually have the potential of collapsing. And you know what they're saying? These banks will actually go down with over 7,000 direct employees who have been employed in those banks. And of course, this will also affect what we call the microeconomics and the SMEs, that is the small, medium enterprise and what have you. Anyway, I know what you're asking right now. The ultimate question you as my viewer are asking right now, what is going on and what are these banks? Because you want to know what are these banks. If you watch this video to the end, at the end of the video, I will say what exactly are these banks. And is it yours in the list? You're going to check that one out at the end of this video. But for now, what exactly is going on in the world of the finances? Listen, the reason why the KBA, they are saying that these banks actually have the potential of going down, there is what we call like Business Laws Amendment of 2024. These are new proposals that have been placed there by the government or by the Central Bank of Kenya, should I say, or whoever is proposing this thing to make sure that, you see, in Kenya, by the way, I'm going to use a simple language to explain to you. I'm not going to use heavy economics words and such. There is something called core capital. Core capital, okay? Now, I'll tell you what is core capital. But what's happening is that right now in any bank in Kenya, by law, they are supposed to have a core capital of 1 billion. They're supposed to have a core capital of 1 billion. 1 billion is equivalent to, say, $10 million or something of sort. Yeah, let's call it $10 million or thereabouts. So that is what they're supposed to have. Now, the proposal that are there is that they don't want banks to have a core capital of 1 billion. They wanted to raise this amount to 10 billion. This is like $100 million. That is what the bank need to have as their core capital. I know you are like, okay, Joseph, what is core capital? What is it important? Now, a core capital is simply that money that is, I'm going to use a layman's language, okay? Core capital is that money that is set aside to caution the operations of the business or the operations of the bank. It's literally the money that is set aside or the capital that is set aside to sort of put the bank afloat in case something happens. Let's say financial crisis happens, okay? For example, people are saying, hey, withdraw your money. I don't know banks will do what. Let's say such a thing happens. This money that is set aside is usually meant to make sure that at least the bank's operation is actually cautioned, even when they are making losses. Are we together? Purposefully, that money is actually set aside, or that capital is actually set aside to make sure that the bank keeps operating in case of things like insolvency. That is what we call the core capital. So the current banks or the current regulations requires the banks to have a core capital of 1 billion. Now, the proposal is saying that the banks should have a core capital of 10 billion within the next 3 years. From today, I'm making this video of 2024. So if this goes by effective, say, 2027, assuming, then it means all these 224 banks that the KBA, that is Kenya Bankers Association, have said will actually go down. Why will they go down? Because most of these 24, by the way, in Kenya we have over like, I think 49, 50 around there. You can check it, for 249 banks in Kenya. So it means we have others that are safer, okay? Now, they are saying if this effect goes by, if this law, this amendment, the Business Law Amendment of 2024, if it goes by and is affected by the, Kenya National Assembly Committee of Finance and whatever, if it goes ahead and actually affected, then it means these banks will have none other than just to vacate the business and say, you know what, guys, we did our best, we cannot do anything. And of course, they are saying that if that happens, then it will affect the tax collection, of which it is true, if you can argue that way. Government will actually have a less of basket in terms of the taxes, blah, 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 although that one can be explained deeper. Two, they are saying, hey, it will affect the financial market of the country because, of course, there are some businesses that borrowed from those institutions, blah, blah, blah. And of course, any institution usually sort of, pegs its argument on the matters to do with the number of people they have employed. These banks, the total 24 banks in Kenya right now, as you speak, those banks, yeah, they have employed 7,000 people. So therefore, that means if this banks goes down, then 7,000 direct people I mean, direct people, they go down, then mean there is no job. Now, the question is this, okay, why is all this happening, and what are these banks, and what exactly can you do and to sort of not get yourself in this kind of case scenario? But before I tell you what are these banks, let me tell you one secret here. There is something called these banks, or this KBA. I said KBA, that is Kenya Bankers Association. It's actually arguing that it will affect the market. But if you look at it with what we call the microscopic lenses, you realize that most of these banks in Kenya, they sort of look, they really don't give that money to the private sector. I mean, we can all agree with that. How many of you watching this video and you're a Kenyan, and recently you've been trying to acquire or access a bank loan or a loan from a bank? How possible was it? You know, how effective? You get what I'm saying? Now, this bank, they're arguing that, hey, you know what? It's going to affect the private sector. But now, if you ask yourself, seriously, these banks, they usually invest on the lucrative deals of what we call there's a government securities. Actually, these banks, they prefer even lending the government. That is through the government securities. That is the treasury bills and the treasury bonds, compared to them giving this money to the private sector. When I say private sector, I simply mean like two institutions here. We have MSMEs, that is micro, small, medium enterprises, and then we have SMEs, so small, medium enterprises, or whatever. Now, see, they argue that, hey, this is where our money goes by. No, but we all know a huge chunk of this cash is actually going to the government securities, because, I mean, banks are the biggest holders of the government securities, if you didn't know that. By the way, recently I actually was learning that only, I don't know, 9 banks in Kenya, 9 banks, I won't mention names, they have actually bagged over 110 billion. That is close to $1 billion US dollars in terms of profit out of that particular government. Oh, by the way, guys, I don't know that you know this. This is another breaking news. Churches, can you imagine this? Churches, households, and NGOs, they are currently now the biggest holders of the government securities in Kenya. Can you imagine churches are investing? And you as an individual, I'm telling you to invest, you're saying, oh, whatever. Now, can you imagine that is happening right now? So we actually living in very, very funny times as far as the finances are concerned. Now, I know what you're waiting for. I know I said I'm going to give you and tell you what are these banks, are they, and what are the likely banks going to be affected, and are you safe, and all those kind of things, okay? Now, the point is this, let's get into the business. Now, what are these banks that are going to be affected? Of course, I'm going to help you to make a decision, and I want you to be very smart and wise when I'm actually making this submission. Because if you are smart, you will get what I'm telling you. I repeat, I'm about to say the banks that are going to be affected this, but there is a way I'm going to deliver this message, and I want you to be smart. In Kenya, we say in Swahili, uvute heri. You just be smart. Just spread your tentacles, because I'm going to speak in parables. You know why? In Kenya, we say we don't have a row. Yeah, I don't want to get myself into problems with whatever. Now, this is what I'm going to tell you. Kenya, or not even Kenya, globally, but let me just talk about Kenya. Banks are classified into 3 categories. We have Tier 1 banks, okay? We have Tier 2 banks. Are we together? And we have Tier 3 banks. Oh, okay. Joseph, I didn't know that. Absolutely. This is how the banks are classified. Now, when it comes to Tier 1 banks, these are the beasts. These are the animals. These are the, you know, in Kenya, you already know that bank, yeah? That one and another one and another. These are the banks that, if you come from Kenya, of course, you know what I'm talking about. See, if you come from Kenya, you will definitely know there is that bank that almost everyone knows them. These are the big banks. These are the banks that are very hard. They are very hard. And I'm using the word very, very hard to go down. Very hard to go down. Why? Because of their assets and what they have. They do not have, I highly doubt, and I stand corrected, I highly doubt them raising 10 billion needed core capital. It is not a problem. So definitely, I'm almost 100% sure that I don't think we have any Tier 1 bank there, because Tier 1 banks, telling them to raise their core capital to what, 10 billion, that's not an issue. They can get, some of them are even making multiples, tens of these in terms of the profit. I mean, it is possible for them to raise that capital, especially in that period of 3 years. Are we together? I want to explain to you step by step so that you understand. And I said the tier 1 banks, these are the biggest banks in Kenya that we know. And then we go to tier 2 banks. The tier 2 banks, these are simply banks, we can say they are mid-sized banks. Mid-sized banks, okay? It's like they sit on fence, okay? They are neither hot, neither are they cold. What do I mean? In terms of the, yes, they do have the asset, they do have the investments there, telling them to raise the 10 billion core capital. Yeah, they can, okay, yeah, they can, although it will be a little bit of a stretch or something. Yes, they can, but not all of them. Yes, they can. They can find a way. They can find a way of, working out and something of sort. And probably you find these are the banks that you find they can tend to merge. This bank comes together. They say, hey, you know what? Hey, you bank A, hey, and I'm bank B. Hey, instead of us closing down our doors, hey, do this, yeah, just come. We merge, we become together, we become sort of amalgamated or something of sort, and then we raise the capital, and then we can have a new bank called so and so. Maybe we can have our initials joined together, blah blah blah, all those kind of things. Okay, and I'm not saying most of the tier 1 banks, they tend to buy off those going down banks. They can actually go to, before I say that, let's go to tier 3. Tier 3 banks, now this is where we have the issue. This is where we have the crisis, because these banks are small, they have small capital, they have less assets and whatever. And you find this tier 1 bank, they control like 75% of all the banks. This one, they can control like 18% of all the banks here in Kenya. And then of course, the other one is shared among the other tier 3 banks. Then when you come to the tier 3 banks, you find they really don't have that big asset. It's that bank that you can show up, you probably find like you are the only one who being served. They have like a single teller or two. Like it's that bank that you find like, hey, it's somewhere, it's trying to stretch up and do something here and there, So telling them to raise 10 billion, whoa, that might be quite of a humongous task. And of course, I believe this 24 number is actually majorly on this and a little bit of tier 2. I'll be shocked if I find any on the tier 1. So majorly this, when I say this, I want you to be smart here. Of course, this is, I cannot just make any claim out there. Of course, you can know the repercussions of that. So I have to really maintain in a professional way, okay? So the tier 3 banks are these banks that you find them, somewhere in the corner, even where they rent to start their business or their branch. You realize that it's not that. You see, there's a bank that a new building can actually be constructed, and then they take the entire ground floor, and of course that is very expensive, and they are just okay, operation goes by. So anyway, those are the tier 3 banks, and those are the banks that gonna be affected mostly by these kind of the regulation that is gonna be affected in the 3 years time. Are we together? Most of the people tend to love these tier 2 and tier 3 banks because of the short queues when they want to go pay school fees, when they want to get some services and what have you. So, I always tell people, yeah, sure. And of course, it's good to understand this classification even when you're opening a bank account. And I think this information is never even shared to us when we open a bank account. By the way, you are never provided with an option of choosing tier 1, tier 2, tier 3. And this is why I always tell you, hey, this is Good Joseph channel. Let's create it and make it a home where everyone, including me, you, and everyone who is coming, we make it a home where I share latest business news, investment news, finance news, and everything. And of course, we build our pockets to be great again. Well, now the point is this. What should you do now if this is happening? Well, we can just cross our fingers and say, hey, the National Assembly would in effect that the National Assembly committee that is assigned for the finances would effect that particular proposal or an amendment to make sure that the KBA, that is Kenya Bankers Association, is actually heard. And of course, maybe they can revise. By the way, the counter offer of the KBA, that is Kenya Bankers Association, they are saying we don't have a problem actually raising this 10 billion, but the problem is the period that you guys are giving us. If you were to give us 8 years, then we can be able to do that. Probably they will find a neutral place whereby everyone will be satisfied. By the way, if you ask me from a finance point of view, wow, I don't know. I hope I'm going to deliver this message in the right way. Them being told to have a core capital of 10 billion, it means good for you and for me. Because they are simply being told, let me use a layman's language, because they are simply being told, hey, you know what, just have a little bit of a certain amount of money set aside, just in case there is something, you can be able to continue. It also means good to them. It's only that, how can I say this? it also means good to them in a way because they can also be able to run the operation somehow. I stand corrected again. It depends on whom I'm referring when I say means good to them as well. So they're actually a counter giving their counter offer is 8 years. The 10 billion will remain. So anyway, I hope maybe they're gonna sit down and have all the discussion. But as of now, I think things are tightening up. That's why I said 24 banks in Kenya to shut down potentially based on what we are having or getting in terms of the news. So based on that, guys, hey, guess what? It's always good to stay on look and make sure that at least if you do love the services of the other banks, and of course we should subscribe to them, and for God's sake, even the small banks ought to grow. Everyone has the right to grow and they need to be subscribed to. And by the way, not that they are bad banks, not that right now they're having any problem. No, they're not having any problem. They're actually running their businesses okay. It's only that maybe this money that are being asked, it's like, let's say you have the capacity to raise, say, $1 million in 4 years, but someone is telling you, I want to have it in 1 year. So it becomes a little bit tight. You really have to rethink. Now, I was talking about the Taiwan bank. Most of the Taiwan banks, they tend to not to merge with this. Okay, they can have a deal of merging, but hardly can they negotiate. What happens, like China and Kenya making a decision or coming into a deal. Of course, China is made up of over 1.3 billion people. Kenya is made up of 50 million. Like, what kind of a deal can we really get on our favor, surely, such kind of. But when you tell me South Africa and Kenya to negotiate like 50 million and 60 million, it kind of makes sense. You get what I'm saying? With all the due respect to all those great countries, China's and whatever. We love them. They are great anyway. I'm trying to make my point here. Now, the point is the Tier 1 tend to usually buy these Tier 3 banks that are actually going down because they are there to make profit anyway. The Tier 2 tends to think of merging with, they can actually negotiate with Tier 3 banks, or the Tier 3 banks on themselves, they can actually come with the thing, merge together, raise the capital, and they can continue with the operation. So there are various ways on how they can actually snatch themselves out of these of the new amendment bill of the business laws. So that is good, Joseph. I hope I've answered the question, and I hope you're informed as far as the finances are concerned. And guess what? I upload a video each and every day sharing that kind of information. So stay put that notification bells on and leave a comment on the comment section. Tell me what you think. If you're working in a bank, hey, did I do fair or justice to this video? See you there.